Have you ever wondered why the people who lied about you are still walking around like nothing happened? Why those who shredded your reputation, whispered your name in darkness, and twisted your truth into weapons? Why do they still smile, still prosper, still sleep peacefully at night? Does God even see what they did to you? Does heaven keep receipts? Or did your pain just evaporate into the void, like it never mattered? Let me tell you something that's going to shake the foundation of everything you thought you knew about divine justice. God didn't just see what they did. He recorded it. Every lie, every smirk, every group chat where your name became their entertainment, every twisted story they sold as truth. Heaven doesn't have a delete button. There's no unsend option in the spiritual realm. What they spoke against you in secret has been documented in a courtroom they can't see, and the verdict is already written. You've been carrying this weight, haven't you? The sting of betrayal, the confusion of watching people you trusted become strangers who slandered you without flinching. You've questioned yourself, wondered if maybe you deserved it. Maybe you weren't as good as you thought. Maybe God forgot about you. Maybe justice is just a concept we tell ourselves to sleep better at night. But what if I told you their downfall already began the moment they opened their mouth against you? What if I told you that every lie they planted became a seed, but not the kind they intended? What if I told you that while they were busy destroying your name, God was busy constructing your elevation, that their slander didn't bury you? It fertilized the ground beneath your destiny. See, chosen ones operate under a different law, a spiritual law that most people never understand until it's too late. When someone attacks you with malicious intent, they don't just harm you. They activate something in the heavenly realm they cannot control, cannot manipulate, and cannot escape. Their words became boomerangs, and boomerangs always come back. Right now, while you're watching this, they're starting to feel it, the unraveling. The doors that used to open now stay locked. The relationships that felt solid now feel shaky. The confidence they had is cracking, and they don't even know why. But you do, because what goes around doesn't just come around, it comes back with interest. Before we go deeper, I want to say something from my heart. Thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just giving, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let that be your seed today. Now let's talk about what heaven's been preparing while they were busy lying. You know what keeps you up at night. It's not just the lies they told, it's the question that won't leave you alone. Why hasn't God done anything yet? You've prayed, you've waited, you've watched them smile while your name was dragged through the mud, and the silence from heaven feels louder than their slander ever did. So tell me, chosen one, how long are you supposed to endure before justice shows up? How many more nights do you have to replay their betrayal before God finally moves? Here's what they don't tell you in church. God's silence isn't absence, it's preparation. See, when you look at the great ones in Scripture, the ones whose names still echo through eternity, they all had one thing in common. They waited in the dark. They endured the lies. They felt forgotten. Abraham was 75 years old when God called him, and even then, he waited another 25 years before the promise showed up. 100 years old before Isaac was born. Can you imagine? 25 years of whispers. 25 years of people saying, "Where's this God you keep talking about? Where's this promise?" 25 years of feeling like maybe you heard wrong. Maybe you made it all up. Maybe you're just foolish for believing. But here's what Abraham understood that most people miss. The waiting wasn't wasted time. It was weaponized time. Every year of silence was God building something in Abraham that instant miracles could never create. Faith isn't born in the moment of breakthrough. It's forged in the furnace of delay. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God showed up in a burning bush. 40 years. Not 40 days. Not 40 weeks. 40 years of thinking his purpose died in Egypt. 40 years of watching sheep when he could have been leading nations. 40 years of whispers in his own mind. You blew it. You killed a man. You ran. God's done with you. But God wasn't done. God was developing. You see, what looked like exile was actually education. What felt like rejection was actually refinement. Moses needed those 40 years to become the man who could handle what God was about to put in his hands. You can't lead a nation out of bondage if you're still in bondage to your own ego, your own anger, your own need for vindication. And right now, you're in that wilderness. You're in that waiting room. And the lies people told about you, they're not delaying your destiny. They're deepening it. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." But notice what comes before that verse. Jeremiah is writing to people in exile, people who lost everything, people whose city was destroyed, whose temple was burned, and whose reputation was shattered. God didn't give them that promise when things were good. He gave it to them when everything looked finished. That's the context. That's the foundation. God's plans for your prosperity aren't activated when life is easy. They're activated when life is brutal, when your name is dirt, when people think you're done. Romans 8:28 doesn't say all things are good. It says all things work together for good. That means the lies work, the betrayal works, the slander works, not because they were right, but because God knows how to take poison and turn it into medicine. He knows how to take the very weapons they used against you and repurpose them into the tools of your elevation. But here's where most people lose faith. They think God's timing should match their pain level. The more it hurts, the faster He should move. But divine timing doesn't operate on emotional urgency. It operates on spiritual maturity. God isn't waiting because He's cruel. He's waiting because you're not ready yet for what He's about to release. Think about it. If God gave Abraham Isaac at 76, would He have treasured him the same way He did at 100? If Moses led Israel out of Egypt at 40, would he have had the humility to handle it? Or would his ego have destroyed him? Your delay is your development. Your waiting is your training. And those people who lied on you, they're not your enemies. They're your trainers. They're teaching you endurance. They're teaching you how to stand when the world is sitting on your chest. They're teaching you that your identity isn't tied to their opinion. Just as a seed needs time, darkness, and rain to grow into a mighty tree, your purpose is unfolding at this very moment. You don't see it yet because you're still underground, but the roots are spreading. The foundation is strengthening, and when you finally break through the soil, no storm will be strong enough to knock you down because you were built in the dark. Even in the waiting, God's plan is working. Even in the silence, heaven is moving. Even in the slander, your vindication is being constructed. Every lie they told became a brick in the platform God is building for your elevation. Every false accusation became evidence in a case they don't even know has been filed. Every moment you stayed quiet while they talked became proof that you're operating under a different authority. Your time isn't coming. Your time is now. It's been now, since the moment they opened their mouth against you. You just couldn't see it because you were looking for justice in the physical realm. But justice is being executed in the spiritual realm. And when it manifests, when the world finally sees what heaven has been preparing, their mouths will go silent. But there's something you need to understand before we move forward. Something about the lies themselves and why they were necessary for what God is about to do through you. How many times have you looked in the mirror and whispered, "I'm too old for this"? How many dreams have you buried under the weight of birthdays, telling yourself that ships don't turn around once they've sailed past the horizon? And here's the question that haunts you most. What if the best years of your life are already behind you, and all that's left is managing the decline? Let me tell you something that's going to disturb every lie you've been told. About age, about timing, about what's possible when you've got more years behind you than ahead. The enemy's greatest weapon isn't the lies other people told about you. It's the lies you started telling yourself. I'm too old to start over. My time has passed. God used me once, but that season is over. You know what that is? That's not wisdom. That's not acceptance. That's agreement with the very forces that want to see you quit before the final chapter even begins. Because here's what they don't want you to know. Your latter days were always meant to be greater than your former days. Not equal. Greater. Job 8:7 says it plain. Though your beginning was small, yet your latter end would increase abundantly. That's not poetry. That's prophecy. That's divine mathematics. God doesn't do decline, He does multiplication. And the fact that you're still breathing means He's not done multiplying. You think you're too old. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to nations. 90. Think about that. In an age when people didn't have the medical technology we have now. When a woman that age should have been planning her funeral, not planning a nursery, God showed up and said, "We're starting now." Not 20 years ago. Not when it made sense. Now. And you know what Sarah did before the miracle came? She laughed. Genesis 18:12. She literally laughed at God's promise because it sounded absurd. After I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure? She called herself worn out. She called Abraham old. She looked at the facts and said, "This is impossible." But here's what you need to understand. Chosen one. God specializes in impossible. He's not interested in what you can do in your own strength. He's interested in what he can do through your weakness. Because when a 90-year-old woman gives birth, nobody credits her biology. They credit her God. That's why your age isn't a liability. It's a setup. It's a stage. It's God saying, I want everyone to know this wasn't you, this was me. Caleb was 85 years old when he said, "Give me this mountain." 85. While everyone else his age was settling into retirement, reminiscing about the good old days, Caleb was staring at giants and saying, I want the hardest territory. I want the land nobody else can take. Joshua 14:11 records him saying, I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me. Just as my strength was then, so now is my strength. That's not denial, that's declaration. That's a man who understood that his body might have aged, but his assignment hadn't expired. So, when you say, I'm too old, what you're really saying is, I don't believe God can use me anymore. And that's the lie you need to confront today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because every day you believe that lie is another day stolen from the purpose that's still pulsing in your veins. But what's left for me, you ask? What's left? Everything they tried to take. Everything they said you'd never have. Everything you thought you lost when they slandered your name and walked away. See, you thought their betrayal ended your story. But it didn't end anything. It eliminated distractions. It removed counterfeit relationships so authentic ones could come. It cleared the stage so God could bring in the real players. Anna, the prophetess, was 84 years old, widowed for decades, when she finally saw the Messiah. Luke 2:36-38. 84 years of waiting. 84 years of showing up to the temple day after day, worshiping, fasting, praying. Most people would have given up at 40. God, if you were going to use me, wouldn't you have done it by now? But Anna understood something profound. Your latter years aren't about winding down. They're about showing up, because the miracle isn't tied to your youth. It's tied to your faithfulness. God doesn't let the sun set on your dreams. He's not in the business of abandoning purpose just because you've collected some wrinkles and gray hair. He's in the business of rewriting stories. And let me tell you something that's going to shift everything. Yours isn't over yet. You know why? Because the lies they told about you weren't the ending. They were the intermission. They were the moment when the lights went down, the audience got restless, and everyone wondered if the show was canceled. But intermissions don't mean the play is over. They mean the next act is about to begin, and it's going to be more powerful than anything that came before. Right now, God is backstage, rearranging the set. He's repositioning the lights. He's getting ready to bring you back out, not as the person they slandered, but as the person he's been building in secret. And when the curtain rises, their lies will look like bad reviews written by critics who walked out too early. But I've made too many mistakes, you say. I've wasted too much time. Beloved, do you think God didn't account for that? Do you think your mistakes surprised him? He factored in your failures before you were born. He knew every wrong turn you'd take every year. You'd waste every lie you'd believe about yourself, and he still called you chosen. The Apostle Paul didn't start his ministry until after he spent years murdering Christians. Years. He was complicit in the death of Stephen. He hunted believers like animals. And yet God said, him, that's the one I want to write most of the New Testament. Not in spite of his past, because of it. Because Paul's testimony would prove that nobody is too far gone, too old, or too broken for God to use powerfully. You think your past disqualifies you. Your past is your credential. It's the proof that God's grace is real, that His power works in weakness, that His glory shines brightest against the backdrop of human failure. So, here's what I need you to do right now. Stop negotiating with doubt. Stop entertaining the lie that your time is up. Stop giving fear a seat at the table where your future is being decided. Because the very fact that you're still here, still breathing, still listening to this message, that's not coincidence. That's confirmation. God isn't finished. And the next move He's about to make through your life is going to silence every mouth that spoke against you. But here's what you need to know about the people who lied on you and why their judgment day is closer than they think. What if I told you that everything you've been through, every lie, every betrayal, every sleepless night, was actually God preparing you for the most important assignment of your life? What if the door to your destiny has been standing open this entire time, and the only thing keeping you from walking through it is the belief that you're not ready? And here's the question that should terrify you. What if you die with your purpose still locked inside you because you spent your final years waiting for permission that God already gave? Listen to me, carefully chosen one. There is no someday. There is no when things calm down. There is no after I get myself together. There is only now. This moment, this breath, this decision. Because destiny doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It waits for obedient action. You've been standing at the threshold long enough. You've been peeking through the crack in the door, wondering if you're qualified, if you're worthy, if you've got what it takes. And while you've been hesitating, time has been moving. Days have turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. And that purpose God planted in you before you were born, it's been pacing back and forth, waiting for you to finally say yes. Philippians 3:14 says, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Press toward, not stroll toward, not think about, not plan to eventually consider. Press. That word means to pursue with intensity, to push through resistance, to advance with purpose, even when everything in you wants to quit. Paul wrote that from a prison cell, not from a mansion, not from a position of comfort, from chains. And still he pressed. So what's your excuse? I'm too tired. Paul was beaten, shipwrecked, and left for dead. I don't have the resources. Paul had nothing but a pen and a purpose. People have rejected me. Paul was rejected by the very people he tried to save, and yet he pressed. You know why? Because he understood that his destiny wasn't about him. It was about the people who needed what only he could deliver. And your destiny, beloved, isn't about you either. It's about the person who's praying for a breakthrough you're supposed to bring. It's about the testimony you're supposed to tell. It's about the light you're supposed to carry into rooms that have been dark for too long. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." Read that again. God prepared works beforehand. Before you were born, he already mapped out assignments with your name on them. He already identified problems only you can solve. He already positioned people only you can reach. The work is ready. The question is, are you? And let me tell you something that's going to shake you. Every day you delay is a day someone else suffers because you weren't in position. Every week you hesitate is a week someone misses the message they needed to hear from you. Every month you wait for a better time is a month destiny gets postponed not just for you, but for everyone connected to your obedience. That's the weight of this moment. That's the urgency. This isn't about self-improvement. This isn't about feeling good. This is about stewardship. God gave you gifts, talents, experiences, and a story that's uniquely yours. And he expects a return on his investment. You've been treating your calling like a hobby, like something you'll get to when life slows down. But life doesn't slow down. Life accelerates toward the finish line. And when you stand before God, he's not going to ask why you didn't do more. He's going to ask why you didn't do what he specifically assigned to you. But I don't feel ready, you say. Good. That means you're in the perfect position for God to show up. Moses didn't feel ready. Gideon didn't feel ready. Jeremiah said, "I'm just a youth." Every single person God used in Scripture felt unqualified because God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Your feelings of inadequacy aren't disqualifications. They're confirmations that this is bigger than you, which means when it succeeds, he gets the glory. Your destiny is a door that God has opened. Not cracked, not unlocked. Opened, wide open. And he's standing on the other side saying, "Step through it. Don't wait for a bigger sign. This is your moment." You've been asking God for confirmation, but he's been asking you for commitment. You've been looking for a burning bush, but he's saying, "I already spoke. Now move." And here's the part that should light a fire under you. The people who lied about you are watching. They're waiting to see if you'll collapse under the weight of their slander. They're expecting you to give up, fade away, disappear into obscurity. And every day you stay stuck is another day they believe their lies worked. But when you step into your destiny, when you finally walk through that door and start operating in the fullness of what God called you to do, their lies become laughable. Their slander becomes irrelevant. Because you're not defending yourself with words anymore. You're defending yourself with results, with impact, with a life so anointed, so elevated, so undeniably blessed that even your enemies have to admit God is with you. You are more than your years. You are more than your mistakes. You are more than your regrets. You are more than the lies they told and the pain you've carried. You are God's chosen one, handpicked, set apart, anointed for such a time as this. And the moment you start believing that, not just mentally agreeing with it, but actually believing it deep in your bones, everything shifts. Stand tall, beloved, not because you're perfect, but because he is. Walk confidently, not because you've arrived, but because he's with you every step. Step into the purpose He has for you. Not tomorrow, not next year, today, right now. This is your moment. This is your season. This is the chapter where everything changes. So let me ask you directly, are you ready? Are you ready to stop playing small? Are you ready to stop letting fear and doubt hold you hostage? Are you ready to walk into the rooms God prepared for you to speak the words He's put in your mouth, to live the life He destined you for before the foundation of the world? If you're ready, if something in your spirit just stood up and said yes, I want you to do something right now. Comment below. I'm ready. Type it out. Declare it. Let the world know that today is the day you stop waiting and start walking. Because when you declare it publicly, something shifts in the atmosphere. Your faith becomes active. Your intention becomes real. And heaven takes notice. And if you're still hesitating, let me tell you what happens next. If you finally decide to move, what do you do when faith feels like a burden instead of a blessing? When praying feels more like begging and waiting feels more like abandonment? When you've believed God for so long that your belief itself has started to feel foolish, outdated, like something that worked for other people but somehow skipped over you? Let me ask you something that cuts deep. How many times have you questioned whether holding on to faith is actually wisdom or just stubbornness? How many nights have you wondered if maybe you heard God wrong all those years ago? And here's the one that haunts you most. What if you've wasted your life believing in promises that were never meant for you? That right there is the crisis of faith that nobody talks about in church. They tell you to just believe. They tell you to hold on. But they don't tell you what to do when holding on feels like holding water in your hands. No matter how tightly you grip it, keeps slipping through your fingers. They don't prepare you for the kind of exhaustion that comes from decades of trusting a God who seems to operate on a timeline you can't understand. But here's what I need you to hear. Chosen one, your struggle with faith doesn't disqualify you. It deepens you. The fact that you're still standing after everything you've been through. The fact that you're still seeking God even when He feels distant, that's not weakness. That's warrior-level faith. Because anyone can believe when the blessing shows up. But it takes someone with divine DNA to believe when the blessing is nowhere in sight. Job understood this better than anyone. He lost everything in a single day. His children, his wealth, his health, his reputation, everything. And his so-called friends sat in the ashes with him saying, "You must have done something wrong. God doesn't let good people suffer like this." They turned his crisis into a courtroom, making him defend his character while his world was still burning. But here's what Job never did. He never stopped talking to God. He questioned God. He challenged God. He demanded answers from God. But he never walked away. Job 13:15 records him saying, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." That's not blind faith. That's battle-tested faith. That's faith that's been through the fire and came out refined instead of destroyed. You're in your job season right now. People have walked away. Dreams have died. Your body isn't what it used to be. The lies they told about you created losses you're still calculating. And in the middle of all that, you're supposed to keep believing. You're supposed to keep trusting yes. Not because it's easy, but because quitting now would mean everything you endured, was for nothing. David spent years running from Saul, years in caves, years watching a madman sit on a throne that God already promised to David. And the torture wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Every day, David had to wrestle with the question, did I imagine that anointing? Did Samuel make a mistake? Did God change his mind? Because the gap between the promise and the fulfillment was so wide it felt like a canyon with no bridge. But 1 Samuel 36 gives us the key to David's resilience. David strengthened himself in the Lord his God, not in other people, not in circumstances, not in visible evidence. He strengthened himself in the Lord. That means when everyone else walked away, when his own men talked about stoning him, when everything looked lost, David went internal. He reminded himself of who God said he was. He rehearsed past victories. He anchored his soul to truth instead of feelings. And that's what you need to do right now. You need to stop waiting for external validation and start strengthening yourself internally, because faith is like a river. It moves and bends. It crashes against rocks. It gets redirected by obstacles. But the river never forgets its destination. It doesn't matter how many turns it takes. It doesn't matter how long the journey is. The river always finds the ocean. Your faith has been bending. It's been redirected. It's crashed against some hard rocks, but it hasn't stopped flowing. And as long as it's still moving, even in the smallest way, you're still on course. Here's what the enemy wants you to believe: that because you're struggling, you're failing. That because it's taking longer than expected, it's not going to happen. That because you're tired, you should quit. But that's a lie from the pit of hell. Your exhaustion isn't proof that you're done. It's proof that you've been fighting. And fighters don't quit in the final round. You know what's different about faith in your later years? It's not naive anymore. When you're young, faith is easy because you don't know any better. You believe everything is possible because you haven't been disappointed yet. But when you've lived long enough to bury dreams, to watch promises delay, to experience betrayal, your faith becomes something different. It becomes resilient. It becomes steel. And that kind of faith, beloved, is what moves heaven. God doesn't need your untested belief. He needs your proven trust. He needs the kind of faith that's been beat up, dragged through mud, slandered by enemies, questioned by friends, and still says, I'm not letting go. Faith doesn't make the mountain disappear. Let me say that again, because you need to stop waiting for the easy way. Faith doesn't make the mountain disappear, but it makes you strong enough to climb it. It gives you legs when you thought you couldn't walk another step. It gives you breath when you thought your lungs were done. It gives you clarity when confusion tried to paralyze you. The mountain is still there. The lies people told didn't vanish. The pain you've carried didn't magically dissolve. But your capacity to handle it, your ability to keep moving in spite of it, your refusal to bow to it, that's faith in action. And every step you take up that mountain, no matter how slow, is a declaration to hell that you're not done yet. Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Substance, evidence, those are tangible words. That means your faith isn't just a feeling. It's not just positive thinking. It's actual spiritual material. It's evidence that exists in a realm you can't see, but is just as real as anything physical. So when you feel like you're walking on nothing, you're actually walking on substance. When you feel like you have no proof, you're actually carrying evidence. And one day soon, what was invisible will become visible. What was substance in the spirit will manifest in the natural. And everyone who doubted you, everyone who lied on you, everyone who counted you out will see that your faith wasn't foolish. It was foundational. But here's what needs to happen before that manifestation arrives, and it has everything to do with the people who tried to destroy you. What if the reason your breakthrough hasn't happened yet has nothing to do with you being unworthy, and everything to do with divine choreography? What if God has been holding back your blessing, not because you failed, but because the stage wasn't set? The players weren't in position, and the timing wasn't precise enough for the miracle He's planning. And here's the question that should change everything. What if you've been one day away from your manifestation for the last 10 years, but you keep restarting the clock? Every time you doubt, you've been treating delay like punishment, like God forgot about you, like you missed your window. And now you're standing outside in the cold, watching everyone else live the life you were supposed to have. But that's not how divine timing works. God doesn't operate on a first-come, first-served basis. He operates on a when you're ready, when they're ready, when the world is ready basis. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." Everything. Not some things, not the things that make sense. Everything. That means your pain has a season. Your waiting has a season. The lies they told about you have a season. And seasons don't last forever. They shift, they change, they give way to what's next. Think about the seasons in nature. You don't see a rosebud in February and call it a failure because it didn't bloom in winter. You don't look at a bare tree in November and assume it's dead. You understand that everything has its time. The rose will bloom in spring. The tree will fill with leaves in summer, and both will be more glorious because they waited for their appointed time. Habakkuk 2:3 says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it will speak, and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry." Read that carefully. It will not lie. It will surely come. God is giving you a double guarantee. The vision isn't canceled, it's scheduled. And the fact that it's taking longer than you expected doesn't mean it's not coming. It means the appointed time hasn't arrived yet. Joseph was 17 when God gave him the dream. 17. He saw himself ruling, leading, elevated, and then everything fell apart. His brothers threw him in a pit, sold him into slavery. He ended up in Potiphar's house, falsely accused, thrown in prison. 13 years passed between the dream and the fulfillment. 13 years of waiting, suffering, and probably wondering if he made the whole thing up. You may feel like you've missed your moment, but God is just getting started with you. You think the story is ending. He knows it's just beginning. You see your age and think too late. He sees your experience and thinks finally ready. You look at the calendar and panic. He looks at eternity and smiles because he knows what's about to unfold. Here's what delay does that instant gratification never could. It separates the called from the curious. It exposes who's really committed and who was just excited. It reveals who loves the blessing more than the blesser. Because when the blessing takes too long, people walk away. They find another dream. They follow another path. They give up on God and chase something easier. But the chosen ones, they stay. Not because they're superhuman, not because they don't struggle, but because something in their spirit knows that walking away would cost them more than staying ever could. They've invested too much. They've endured too much. They've seen too many confirmations along the way to quit now. So let me ask, can you trust him? Can you trust that the delay isn't denial? Can you trust that what looks like a detour is actually the direct route? Drop a comment below and tell me about a time when God's timing surprised you, when what seemed late turned out to be right on time. Share your story. Encourage someone else who's waiting. Because your testimony might be the confirmation someone needs to hold on for one more day. But before your blessing arrives, there's something that needs to happen to the people who tried to stop it.